Quick, pick 10 crops to survive off of until the end of the world as we know it. Sorry to inform you, but if you didn't pick potatoes, then you're already dead.
Hello, and welcome to the Wham Provides, where the food from plants and animals keeps us satisfied. We can grow it, find it, or catch it for dinner. Come and learn how to get it from a pro to beginner.
I am a garden daddy, father to over 150 plants this year alone. I know what you're thinking. This guy likes to propagate, but what can I say? I've got good seed.
I became a garden daddy last year when I bought this house and made it my mission to convert the entire backyard into an edible landscape. In that year, I successfully grew hundreds of pounds of fruit and veggies, and I learned a lot about ROI in the garden. ROI is the return on investment that we get from our crops.
I'm not really looking to save money, so the returns that I'm looking for come in the form of sustenance.
The more I can subsist off my backyard, the better the investment.
Some crops are a waste of time, some are a waste of space, and some just taste like dick. But to be perfectly honest, I don't mind a little bit of dick taste if it's going to keep me alive.
When evaluating a crop's potential for the apocalypse, I used 5 primary evaluation criteria to place them somewhere along a spectrum of survivability. Number 1. How easy is it to grow, harvest, and replant from seed? 2. How many calories per square foot of garden space am I getting from it? 3. How disease resistant and weather tolerable is it? 4. Does it store or preserve well? And 5. How versatile is it in the kitchen?
After a year of evaluating a ton of different fruits and vegetables under these criteria, I've come up with my top 10 list of survivability crops for 2025. Survival crop number 1, onions. Onions are undoubtedly the crop that I use most frequently in my cooking. They're easy to grow, they're awesome to eat, quick to harvest, and they don't take up much space in the garden because they only have these little vertical shafts of foliage as opposed to bushing out. And the best part about that foliage is that you can consume both parts. I can have these as my green onions, and I can have this as my regular onion. To top it all off, onions store extremely well after curing them and can be preserved even longer by techniques like pickling or powdering. My absolute favorite place for an onion though, inside the tender, warm embrace of my ultimate survival food, which I'm gonna reveal at the end of the video. What are your thoughts on onions as a survival crop? The one pretty major downside to onions on my property and in my particular climate is wireworms.
Wireworm. Wireworms are small hard-bodied larvae that dwell in the soil. They're notorious agricultural pests that prey on short, middle-aged, masochistic white men.
Middle-aged? 9 out of 10. Onions get a 9 out of 10. Survival crop number 2, garlic. A world without garlic is a world I do not want to live in. It's simply the most versatile vegetable in and out of the kitchen. Name one other crop that fights off vampires, bad dates, and bland spaghetti sauce all at the same time. It's like the culinary equivalent of a Swiss Army knife. This is some garlic that I planted on October 6th.
In a world where superfoods are revered, garlic is the silent stinker in the back with a cape made of papery skin, swooping in to save your dish from the clutches of mediocrity. Oh,
that's a nice one.
That's a good one.
Garlic pros aside, this stuff isn't that easy to grow.
Depending on where you live, it can take 8 to 9 months to go from fall planting to summer harvest, and the end product is comparatively quite small. This gives it a low score on the calorie provision index, but that's about the only deduction against it. Garlic doesn't take up much space, and I found it to be tolerant of many forms of environmental and physical stressors.
Once picked and cured, like I'm doing with it now, it preserves better than just about anything on this list, which is good because I gobble up a ton of that shit.
Garlic might not be a survival food from a nutritional standpoint, but it elevates just about every other vegetable on this list, so I'm giving it an 8 out of 10 on the survivability spectrum. Okay, Harvey, I'd love to get your thoughts on the ongoing crisis in Palestine.
Survival crop number 3, tomatoes. Once you've had one of these juicy baddies fresh off the vine, it's so difficult to go back to anything store-bought.
The depth and character of flavor is so delectable that it feels like a waste to boil them into a sauce, though I do it anyway because I can't eat them fast enough. Tomatoes take a while to kick off, but once they start fruiting, they can be one of the most productive fruit in the garden. If you have space to grow them and time to preserve them, tomatoes have the potential to make up for a huge portion of one's caloric requirements. Each tomato fruit contains a ton of new seeds, so reproducing the plant is a non-issue. In fact, you're going to find a lot of these seeds just popping up in your compost. They germinate easily, and you'll often find them sprouting up in different areas of the garden where you never planted them. Once they grow to a couple of feet high, then you need to start supporting them with a trellis or some stakes, as the weight of the emerging fruit becomes too much for the stem to handle, and it eventually topples over. One of the downsides to tomatoes is how sensitive they are to environmental conditions. Last year I grew 3 different varieties of tomatoes, and all of them at one point or another had an issue with disease, hot spells, cold spells, and water fluctuations.
But these are things that I'll tolerate for an ingredient that is absolutely essential in my ultimate survival food. They also get bonus points for their versatility in the kitchen and their fecundity.
Fecundity. The ability to produce an abundance of offspring or new vegetation. As in, just one look at Mike and you get a sense of his effortless fecundity. A natural, born propagator.
Survival crop number 4, cucumbers.
Cucumber.
Cucumbers are like the undercover agents of the garden.
So stealthy in their growth that one minute you have a tiny gherkin, and the next, a submarine-sized behemoth just lurking under those leaves.
Seriously though, these things go from 0 to 100 real quick.
You'd think that with all that growth that they'd be high in calories, but they're actually surprisingly low. What they lack in calories, they make up for in nutrients though. A single 300-gram cucumber can provide up to 11 grams of carbs, 2 grams of protein and fiber, and a huge list of essential vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants.
They're pretty easy to grow, and you can kind of just let them do their thing. But one thing to make sure is that you keep an eye out for powdery mildew, because if you don't keep an eye out for it, you're going to lose all of those valuable nutrients and minerals before you ever get a chance to even taste one.
Just like their pal garlic, cucumbers aren't exactly a food that you're going to subsist exclusively off of, but they fill in a lot of gaps that other veggies have left.
And speaking of filling in, cucumbers must just be the only phallic-shaped fruit or vegetable that have me absolutely begging for a facial. At the spa, of course. The spa, facials at the spa, I give cucumbers a 7. A rock hard 7. Survival crop number 5, beans. Beans, they get no respect. I don't know what accent that is, but beans, they don't get respect. That's because they're super cheap and easy to acquire from the grocery store, so most people like not to grow them because it's just like not a great ROI as far as like cost goes. But as far as survivability goes, there's so much that beans bring to the table. A lot of people choose to dedicate their valuable garden space to higher value crops like tomatoes and peppers.
But I actually think they're the perfect crop for making use of underutilized growing spaces. There are so many different varieties of beans, but most of them are sprawlers that will crawl up anything in front of them. So I like to put beans along fences or trellises, or even right beside high-growing crops like corn.
Another reason why sometimes people don't mess with them is because they can be pretty time-consuming to remove from their pods and shells. But my counter-argument here is that a lot of the time spent during the post-production of these beans after harvest is negated by the time saved during the production of these beans because they're so hands-off as a growing crop.
They're also a legit survival food, with 1 cup of cooked pinto beans coming in at a whopping 347 calories. And they're good calories too, packed with protein, fiber, vitamins, and antioxidants.
It's these things that make them one of the 3 foundational pillars of my ultimate survival food, which we'll get into in a minute here. Okay, so I have very carefully backed myself up into my 3 sisters garden here, which is composed of 3 of my ultimate survival foods, actually. So we got beans that are traveling up corn, and we have squash that's forming an understory here. One of the benefits of this 3 sisters planting method is that the corn grows up, allowing the beans to have something to trellis up onto, and the squash sprawls out, which protects the forest floor or the garden floor, and acts like kind of like a natural mulch. So these 3 things all kind of work together, even like the way that they chemically interact. Like beans are a nitrogen fixer, so they bring nitrogen into the soil, whereas corn, because it has so much foliage, needs a lot of nitrogen. So it's a nitrogen feeder. So these 2 actually work in harmony with each other from a chemical perspective as well.
Do you love the 3 sisters garden? Yeah, are these your 3 favorite crops?
Kale sucks, okay? Let's all admit it. It's the Jake Paul of the vegetable world. It's an ingredient for masochists who are like, I wish my salad was more like a workout. Eating kale is like munching on a sheet of paper that never gets soft or wet. Kale is letting your mouth know that it did something wrong, and this is its punishment. Kale chips? More like crunchy flakes of regret. This here is what my cobblestone garden currently looks like. Pretty dead, right? Well, not fully, because over here, that's kale. And kale don't give no fucks. I planted this in the fall. It's still alive in the spring. It's the only thing that's still alive in the spring. Kale sucks to eat. Kale is great to grow. We're keeping kale. I'm gonna give it a 0 for taste and texture, and I'll be generous by giving it a 7 overall for just being healthy and tolerant and a great survival crop. All right, back to the good stuff. Beets. Beets are something I can definitely get excited about. This one I'm pulling out early just for the case of the video, but one of the beautiful things about beets is that you can eat both the root and the leaves. So just like onions, while the root is growing or the bulb is growing, there's foliage up top, which makes a really good addition to salads and stir fries and anything else that you would normally use greens for. One of the most rad things about beets is that they grow in all 4 seasons here in my climate, which dips into the negatives from November to March. So to have food that continues to grow during that time is amazing. An added benefit is that the beets become sweeter themselves when you hit that frost period. So if you can get them in the ground and get them to grow a lot over the summer and then wait for a frost in the winter or in the fall, then you get like a really sweet crop similar to what you would get with carrots. Just a little added bonus with these things. I like to keep them around because unlike most vegetables which require harvesting and preservation prior to frost, I can just leave these in the ground and the earth acts like a little refrigerator, keeping them perfectly well preserved until I'm ready to harvest. Sometimes the foliage is completely died back, but the root itself is still preserved in the ground, and when I pull it out, it's like rock hard and good to go. So beets are just like nature's preserved vegetable. And then of course there's the taste. It has those like deep, earthy undertones that almost taste like the soil that it was grown in, but like sweet, chewy, like mashed potato-y soil, as weird as that sounds. The earthiness is balanced by a natural sweetness, which is really brought out when you cook it. But one of the things that I really like doing with beets is I like pickling them and preserving them for the winter. Pickle it, and you have one of the best burger toppings known to man. Pickled onions and pickled beets also go super good on salads as well, so added benefit there.
Beets are high in nitrates, which are shown to improve cognitive function, heart health, and exercise performance. They've got carbs, protein, fiber, and a ton of vitamins and minerals. You can steam them, boil them, fry them, grill them, bake them, and eat them raw.
Truly an exceptional plant. 9.5 out of 10. Survival crop number 8, squash. There are so many different varieties and types of squash, but for the sake of practicality, we're going to organize them into 2 different categories: summer squash and winter squash.
Summer squash, like zucchini and yellow squash, are harvested when immature and the skin is tender and edible. Winter squash, like butternut squash and pumpkins, are harvested when fully mature, with hard, thick skins and longer shelf lives. Last year I had several pumpkins still edible as late as January. Between the two, one can eat from winter and summer squash for a fairly large portion of the year. They're a great source of vitamin C and potassium, and they're incredibly versatile in the kitchen.
A couple of downsides though, these bad boys are huge. I'm talking ginormous.
I grew 3 pumpkins in the same size space that I grew hundreds of potatoes. And being that they're in the same family as cucumbers, these bad boys are also prone to powdery mildew. The silver lining here is that squash makes great compost food, and there's a ton of plant material that breaks down extremely fast. I'm giving it a 9 out of 10 on the survivability spectrum.
I like to call this garden bed the corn hub. It's a space where growers and showers alike can all get their cobs off, where we don't give a shuck if you use a little teeth.
Botanists refer to it as the pimp daddy of the vegetable world because this stocked up, cross-pollinating freak makes intervegetable connections like it's Tinder. Needless to say, corn gets around. In fact, you might just find it simmering in a hot bowl of my ultimate survival food. Packed with essential nutrients and antioxidants, corn is a relatively easy crop to grow, but an even easier crop to preserve. Simply leave it on its stalk after it's ripened and let it dry out in the summer and fall sun. It keeps in stores for a long time if you take the kernels off, which you can turn into corn flour and bake all sorts of awesome gluten-free dishes with. The caveat is that it does take up quite a bit of space, and you have to grow a lot of it to produce a decent amount of corn flour.
It also doesn't really like heavy rains or frosts, which are things that I've made peace with in order to gnaw on some of that sweet cob. 9 out of 10. You little corn cat? You know? Survival crop number 10. Potatoes. This is one of my favorite parts of the year. It's like Easter for adults. I'm like on a little egg hunt, but instead of finding eggs, it's potatoes. 10 out of 10, easy. You all knew I was gonna say it. I love potatoes. Potatoes are the best. People have survived off of them during famines throughout history. So I'm gonna just do the same thing they did because they're awesome and they're easy to grow, and they can be grown in bags or containers or in raised beds or in the ground or just in the middle of nowhere. Potatoes are fucking amazing. They're so easy to grow, they store forever, and there's like 1,000 different ways to cook and prepare them.
Potatoes have a balanced nutritional profile and aren't too sensitive to environmental changes, making them a staple food crop of many cultures throughout time. Of course, the most widely known dependency on potatoes was during the Great Potato Famine of Ireland, which happened between 1845 and 1852. A seriously bad case of potato blight destroyed their crop and led to widespread starvation, disease, and death, with approximately 1 million people dying and another 1 million people leaving the country. For all those who perished, the mighty potato was what kept them going beforehand. Almost every gardener I know grows potatoes because they're a core food for self-sufficiency. They're so low maintenance because they basically grow themselves.
For these reasons and many more, I'm deeming potatoes my ultimate survival crop. Good job, potatoes. You're a spud. Well, there you have it. My top 10 crops to survive the apocalypse. Now, obviously, the more variety one can grow, the better. But if you have limited time, space, and money, then these are 10 crops that should keep the pantry stocked for the most part of the year. But of course, these are just ingredients. So actually using them and cooking them and preserving them is a whole other thing. Personally, to maximize my harvests, I like to make big batch freezer meals that I can toss in the freezer and pull out whenever I feel like having that meal. It's nice to have something on the go that is from the garden and still utilizes those fresh ingredients, but preserves them well into the winter. And that actually leads me to my ultimate survival meal, chili. I know it's not a sexy dish that's going to be making magazine covers anytime soon, but it's a meal that's jam-packed with nutrition that I'm able to source from the garden and from the mountains, and it's super practical because I can make it in big batch form. I often make it in like batches of 15 to 20, so that lasts me for like 6 months or so. Another thing that I love about it is that it's a quick meal that can go from frozen to in my stomach in like 30 minutes. Chili is one of the main reasons that I grow so many tomatoes, and honestly probably the main reason that I've chosen to grow beans and corn. They're great on their own, but they're essential to my chili. Anyway, as I continue to grow my green thumb and experiment with a bunch of different veggies, I'm sure that this top 10 list is going to change. So I'm going to consider it a floating top 10 list. There's going to be items that come in and items that come out, and I'll probably update it year by year. But those are my top 10 for this year. So grow those veggies because they're awesome and I like them.